Ladies and gents, it's that day of the week once more in which we're talking about features we would like to see in No Man's Sky and hopefully with the next update. Similarly to the previous two episodes, we're going to go over features shown at E3 but that never made it into the final game, or simply quality of life improvements. I know that there are many more ambitious ideas out there, but for the most part this series is all about trying to stay as close as possible to the vision shown before launch and only bringing up suggestions that could improve the already existing gameplay mechanics. So without further ado, I hope you guys all sit comfy on your chairs, so let's begin. The first feature on the list is something that I completely forgot to mention in the previous video, that's why I'm going to go over it right now. I'm obviously referring to the addition of sandworms, which is something they indeed show in a 2016 trailer. It surprisingly never made it into the game, and I strongly suspect it might take a while for us to get this, because there was another feature added later on which might interact with this in a more buggy way. This is of course the terrain editor, and I suspect it plays a major role in why sandworms haven't been added in No Man's Sky. In short, if Hello Games decides to add this fantastic creature in the game right now, they would also have to predict the type of interaction a player would have with it while it moved. Talking from the perspective of a hyperactive moron such as myself, upon laying my eyes on a sandworm, my first thought would be not to step back and admire it, not taking a cinematic screenshot of it, not even trying to leave it alone in order not to get attacked, but actually jumping on it and trying to dig the very earth beneath it. That's why the feature of adding a sandworm right now would also have to be fully animated, able to interact with the environment, which is something that before the interaction of the terrain editor would have not been a big problem. While previously a simple moving object half submerged into the solid concrete would have been enough, now the devs also have to take into account the possible interactions with the terrain editor tool, and that would arise a lot of problems, a lot of bugs. We of course would need a fully animated creature able to interact with its environment, so that in case the player actually digs beneath it or around it, the game wouldn't go crazy or get too buggy. And this feature needs to be implemented in such a way that both of these go well together and synergize in case this type of interaction actually will happen. Suffice to say that this is no excuse for these majestic monsters to be missing, hence why I even urge Hello Games to add them into the game, even though they most probably don't even watch my videos. Second on the list is another E3 feature that was kinda talked about, which it is of course the possibility of befriending creatures and having pets. I'll expand upon this by saying that I would also love to capture them and actually being able to put them inside my own personal zoo. While it sounds cruel to some of you, I find it cute and I would love to bring more life inside my own base. I don't expect anything over the top, but I would love a small enclosure in which I'm able to display a huge megafauna specimen I was able to find on one of my many voyages, especially since megafauna or any significantly good looking creature is really hard to come by. Bringing one to your base would be such a cool thing, and it would be an accomplishment for you and something for others to admire, especially now that multiplayer is getting full featured. Implementing it wouldn't be that much of a challenge, I presume. I'm not saying we should take huge 10-meter tall dinos and put them on the back of our puny 12-slot ships, but it could all be done with a very simple interaction, such as, for example, stealing, okay that sounds bad, borrowing an egg or a young specimen, putting them inside your spacesuit since it can hold pretty much everything including your base in it. Our spacesuits already act like some kind of pokeballs, except they also hold a lot more than just a few oversized creatures, so it would make sense for you to also capture a specimen, grab him, put him in there, and then just plop him out on the other side of the universe on your base and put him on a display. But it will actually be so cool to have animal enclosures in No Man's Sky, and you could actually make a theme park, so to speak. Maybe even let players admire the beautiful animals while you harvest all of its loot. It would animate the lifeless base experience that it is right now in No Man's Sky. Speaking of cruel treatment and bringing more life to your base, the next feature on the list is surprisingly not something that was shown at E3, but definitely something that the community wants. I'm talking about the possibility of hiring workers for your farm. Long gone would be the dreadful days of planting and harvesting your own crops. Don't you find it ironic you're a multi-billionaire overlord with an oversized mothership and a fleet larger than the ones of most countries on Earth, yet you still manage your crops like some 15th century French peasant? Well, why not hire workers from the space station? They're all unemployed anyway, it's not like they go anywhere, all they do is browse the internet, and some of them even have evolved into being fat and depressed. Why not enrich and make their lifestyles healthier by getting those fat lazy pests on some liberating 24/7 obligatory work for the greater good? Your fat pockets. Fourth on the list is the ability to both acquire and store multiple multi-tools. Since there are so many amazing multi-tool models out there, the possibility to acquire many rare ones and store them is something that the community has wanted for a long time. Many multi-tools have some different bonuses, also look very distinct from one another and very cool. Many have interesting designs, and there's even a multi-tool display case in the game, and it kind of makes sense. I would love to have something like this and being able to store my multi-tools that I have managed to gather in my adventures. It will also make me go and visit all the previous places I've been into, and maybe even make me so that I actively search for these tools. It would be something that I really want to see. A lot of members of the community would love to see something like this in their game, and we would also be able to swap them out in case we want to do something different. For example, if you get the scientific one, that one has very huge mining bonuses, so you would want to use that in case you're going on a mining excursion. That's why we would really want the ability to store more of the same type. Fifth on the list is cross-platform play. Many times the No Man's Sky hubs feel rather empty and devoid of life, especially on the PC version. I do understand that the community is low on numbers and the game itself is supposed to be mostly a single player, but cross-platform play should definitely be a thing. It isn't too much about Hello Games being in control as much as Sony is, and of course Microsoft with the next update, but I would love to be able to play with people on the console without having the need to buy this game there as well. I'm mostly talking about, of course, from a PC player point of view, since the community over here is a little bit smaller and less well organized, but I'd love to play with my console fans, for example, and without much restriction or needing to buy that game on that platform again. Many games these days allow cross-platform play, so I really hope that at the very least Microsoft does something in this regard. I know Sony is pretty much stuck up to its own ways and doesn't really leave too much freedom to the community, but I would at least want to play with the folks over on the Xbox version of the game, and it wouldn't be unfair to anybody since it's not really such a competitive game. Playing with a keyboard and mouse is not significantly better than playing with a controller, so it would be quite even and quite fun to interact with more members of the community than we can currently do. Sixth on the list is the ability to land and mine asteroids. Some of the asteroids in this game get pretty big and definitely enough to hold several starships, not just one. Landing on asteroids would bring so much fun to the game. Players always like pushing the boundaries of gaming, so this type of feature is exactly what I would like to see in No Man's Sky, adding to the fact that you can indeed cheat your way already on an asteroid by using infinite jetpack from a planet, and since it's mostly fully rendered already and the actual solid object you can walk onto, it would be fun to have this feature fully into the game. If that proves impossible to make, give players the ability to just jump off their ships in space and try to manually land towards an asteroid they want to go onto. Heck, even give us an oxygen meter like the one underwater, except it's in space, and if a player fails to get in his ship by the time the oxygen depletes, he'll just die or respawn at his previously saved spot. This would ensure that nobody would get stuck in space indefinitely, so it would most probably work out really well. You don't get stuck because you have that oxygen meter you have to pay attention to. You will be able to get some really nice scenic views, like checking out a planet from the asteroid that floats around it. It will be something really awesome. Since we're on the subject of space still, the seventh point on the list is the ability to build in space. Colonies in Next will bring the ability for players to build bases together and not just on one planet but on multiple planets in the same system. The next best thing would be to bring this feature in space and let players actually build their own space stations. I see this feature being implemented in two ways. Either let complete freedom where to build it, which would be a huge challenge and probably would never happen, or the second one, which is much better, give us a designated spot inside a solar system where the player can add structural parts to it. It would be basically similar to how you claim and build a base right now by finding the designated spot and building upon it. The already existing space stations could also be slightly reworked and give players areas to add structural parts to. This would bring a much more desired facelift to the game, to the huge, boring and hollow floating space stations we currently have, and it would definitely bring up the community together in order to make something very awesome and have something like a ISS of No Man's Sky, like we have the one on Earth. So it would be really freaking awesome to have an intergalactic space agency of some sort. Last but not least on the list is something that I have actually played with a few days ago, and it's a mod that adds a variety of new exocrafts. This is why the next point on the list is all about new types of exocrafts. While all the models in that mod are based on the already existing 3 categories, for the most part they keep the same controls while they still retain interesting gameplay, and they all play out in different ways. For example, I was able to drive an exocraft which was nothing more than a huge wheel, and it was probably the most fun I had in this game. There's a lot of potential in here for something like this, and since we're on the subject of exocrafts, also make their thrusters last a little bit longer so you can at least catch a little bit more speed. That would be something really awesome. Jumping in game with one wheel exocraft was one of the funnest experience I've ever had, and it was pretty freaking awesome, and I would definitely love to see this feature being added by Hello Games, especially since modders are able to do that already. And this concludes today's list of features that No Man's Sky players are dying to see in their game. It's slightly shorter than the previous ones, but that is because we've kinda exhausted all of our options at the moment. So if you guys enjoyed this video or agreed with the list, a like and a subscribe would be super appreciated. Also, don't forget to activate the notification bell, and I will see you guys next time.